Hi there. I am coming through the airwaves to you from the center of a windy spring day. Where I live, the trees and bushes are brightening up after a long brown-gray winter, and their greens and reds and yellows are a blessing. I hope that you are free to move around as you wish today, and that you are safe when you do it. I know that this is a freedom that not everyone has, but I wish this today for you, every person where you are, where I am, and everyone around the globe. It's Wednesday, April 16th. My name is Grover, and you're listening to Grover Reads the News. I have a news update for you. Would you like to hear it? If so, keep listening. If not, I'll offer again soon. And with that, let's hear some news. First, I have a quick update about tariffs in the United States. Shortly after I sent out last week's update that included news about the Trump administration instituting massive tariffs on most countries that the U.S. trades with, the stock and bond markets took a free fall and corporations balked. So Trump announced a 90-day reduction of tariffs to 10% on countries that did not, quote, retaliate, maintaining high tariffs on China. The official White House Twitter/X account then changed its header to, quote, do not retaliate and you will be rewarded, which is almost word for word plagiarized from Voldemort talking into people's brains during a pause in the siege on Hogwarts. Yes, I put a link to a description of the movie if you have no idea what I'm talking about. Other countries' responses to the U.S. tariff policies continue to grow. Hong Kong announced they will stop transporting mail packages to or from the United States. The Ivory Coast threatened to make cocoa prices more expensive if the U.S. continues its tariffs, and instead will focus on trade with the EU. Other countries announced that they would go into negotiations with Trump during this 90-day period to try to come to a different tariff agreement. I'll keep you updated as this unfolds. Next, I have U.S. news from the executive office about snatching people up from our neighborhoods. A federal judge continues to order the Trump administration to comply with her order, which was backed up by the Supreme Court, to return the sheet metal apprentice and father, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, to the U.S. He was stopped while driving with his disabled son, then taken by ICE from Maryland, where he lives with his wife and children, and he was sent to an overcrowded and notoriously dangerous prison in El Salvador, a country Garcia fled 14 years ago when he was 16 years old. A Democratic U.S. Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, said he intends to leave for El Salvador today in hopes of securing Abrego Garcia's release. Quote, we must urgently continue working to return Kilmar safely home to Maryland. Trump and the president of El Salvador met in the Oval Office this week and performed defiance of the order to return this man to his home. Trump also said he, quote, loves the idea proposed by the Salvadorian president of deporting American citizens to El Salvador. He then told the Salvadorian president to build 5 more prisons. Meanwhile, a U.S. judge in Louisiana has ruled that Mahmoud Khalil can be deported under Rubio's assertion that his, quote, current or expected beliefs, statements, or associations are reason enough to deport Khalil, a standard that is chilling for all of us who have beliefs that this or any future administration do not share. Khalil is a permanent resident of the United States and was a key leader in protests against the ongoing killings of more than 50,000 Palestinians and the devastation of the infrastructure people need to live in his homeland. And the Associated Press reports that at least 790 students at more than 120 colleges and universities in half of the states in the U.S. have had their visas revoked or their legal status terminated in recent weeks. Next, we have transnational news about trans and LGBQ rights. This week, the United Kingdom's top court ruled that the words women and sex in the UK Equality Act are associated with biological sex, potentially disrupting the lives and leadership of trans women in the UK. Scottish Trans, a UK-based trans rights organization, urged people not to panic after the ruling. Vic Valentine, manager of the charity, said, quote, "We are really shocked by today's Supreme Court decision, which reverses 20 years of understanding on how the law recognizes trans men and women with the gender recognition certificates," unquote. The Equality Act affects policymaking on gender in sports and the armed services, hospitals, as well as women-only charities and access to changing rooms with women-only spaces, reports The Guardian. The anti-trans campaign that took this case all the way to the UK's top court was financially backed by Harry Potter author and billionaire J.K. Rowling. In the US, the federal administration is suing the state of Maine for not complying with the executive order they issued to ban trans girls from participating in girls' sports. Maine's governor says that by affirming the rights of trans girls and women to play on girls' and women's sports teams, she's merely adhering to state law. Trans people across the U.S. are reporting that the government is changing the gender markers on their passports, even when they have been living with the correct gender marker for years and were simply submitting their regular passport for renewal. For example, a trans man who's had an M on his driver's license, passport, and a changed birth certificate may receive a passport back with an F on it, making it increasingly dangerous to cross international borders. This comes after the Trump administration's executive order stating that there are only two sexes and a new State Department policy that requires applicants to note their binary biological sex at birth. In a recent opinion essay, M. Gesson refers to the process happening to trans people as denationing trans people and makes connections to the same denationing phenomenon happening to immigrants, taking away the right to have rights, as Jewish political theorist Hannah Arendt articulated after she was forced into exile during the Holocaust. Mahmoud Khalil asked in his recent op-ed in The Guardian, who has the right to have rights? This question, who has the right to have rights, outlined by the state, like the right to come and go from the United States if you're trans, or the rights to due process if you're an immigrant, is an increasingly important one. And I encourage you to read Gesson and Khalil's op-eds, which are linked in the show notes or footnotes of whoever reads the news. Finally, this week, the Hungarian parliament passed an amendment to the Hungarian constitution banning all LGBTQ public events, a decision that legal scholars and critics call another step towards authoritarianism by the populist government. The way the law is framed, the way the constitutional change is framed is particularly dangerous to LGBTQ people, pitting LGBTQ people, some of whom are legally still children, against the rights of children generally, declaring, quote, that children's rights to moral, physical, and spiritual development supersede any right other than the right to life, including that to peaceably assemble. Hungary's contentious child protection legislation prohibits the, quote, depiction or promotion, unquote, of homosexuality to minors under 18, reports CNN. That law also allows authorities to use facial recognition tools to identify people who attended prohibited events, such as Budapest Pride. Critics say the measures do little to protect children and are being used to distract from more serious problems facing the country and mobilize Orban's right-wing base ahead of elections. Next, we have international news about Sudan. The Associated Press reports that more than 300 civilians were killed within 2 days of intense fighting in Sudan's Darfur region. After more than 2 years of civil war, the entire country is experiencing a famine. At least 24,000 people have been killed since the war started, although activists say the number is much higher. And at least 13 million Sudanese had to flee their homes, including 4 million who have fled to other countries. A vast camp for more than 500,000 people was set on fire this week by one side of the conflict, the Rapid Support Forces. The escalation in the fighting came ahead of a conference in London where Britain, the EU, and African Union leaders, as well as foreign ministers, are expected to discuss pathways to peace. Whew. Finally, we have nature news about Milky seas. Have you ever seen the sea glow in the dark? I haven't, but I am a serious landlubber. However, for over 400 years, sailors have reported a mysterious phenomenon in which the ocean appears to glow as far as the eye can see. And CNN reports on a new database created by scientists to help understand where and why these glowing sea phenomenon happen and what it means for ocean life. A sailor named Brunskill, sailing through the Arabian Sea in 1967, wrote, quote, "The sea from horizon to horizon in all directions took on a phosphorescent glow. The moon had just set and the whole sea was several shades lighter than the sky. Observers often describe milky seas as glowing like the stars that kids stick to their ceilings. But the glow, unlike the stickers, can be strong enough for sailors to read by and can stretch 39,000 miles wide." After compiling all known records of Milky Sea sightings from historical records of eyewitness reports by sailors, as well as satellite data, the study authors noted that Milky Seas primarily appear in the Arabian Sea and Southeast Asian waters, and they may be impacted by global climate events such as the Indian Ocean dipole and the El Niño Southern Oscillation. Milky Seas are different from the more common bioluminescent ocean events, where organisms emit a blue glow when disturbed, such as when a fish swim by or waves crash on the shore, in contrast to the steady glow emitted by the Milky Sea event. This summary is derived from reporting by Taylor Nicolai at CNN. Thanks for joining me to face the news today. It was an extra long one. The news is particularly intense this week. So as you move from hearing this news update, I hope that you feel the wind or sun on your face this week and know that you are here, alive, and that a better way of relating to each other and the world around us is possible and being created right now, that you're an important part of creating it. Next week, I'll be with my family and not on a computer. I'll release a special remix episode of nature-only content while I'm out and return to you the last week of April to catch us all up on what's moved in the world around us. I recommend listening to Agiris Dixon's Fascism Barometer podcast if you're really missing some kind of groundedness with what's happening in the world and what we ought to do about it. Until next time, be well.